I've been waiting for the meeting to start for like 2 minutes.
Oh,
Well, I know you're recording because I got a message.
Good. Yeah, I hope some of the guys that wanted or couldn't make it Monday night could make it tonight. So Jim Reynolds said he could not make it. Ashley said she was still on the train or something, so she won't be out yet. Okay, so when I sent out the email for a reminder, I attached the original message, and what I had for the agenda items are ISO exposures for DSLR imaging and pairing a telescope to a camera. So those were the two main subjects. And if we want to talk about maybe, something else with the lunar eclipse photography or something like that, that's fine too. So I'll open it up for the ISO exposures or the pairing a telescope, whatever you guys want to start with.
Maybe with the ISO. I mean, that's, I know that's where I have my, sometimes deciding what ISO to go with for, I don't know which is more important, the exposure length or the ISO, higher the ISO.
I've just been wiped out by my cat. Get on your nest.
how big is your cat?
Well, he's on the desk.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and he insists on walking through it. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. Ignore it. But if I disappear, that's why. So now.
I think part of the decision, it's been a while since I've done DSLR, but is how the ISO matches up with the noise that's generated. So I know for like the 6D, the sweet spot was 1600 ISO is for noise. Every camera is different. And then it's just a matter, okay, if I go to a lower ISO, then I just, stack more.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, I agree with that because, the 6D was, or the 5D Mark III or 4, they were all in that range. The newer cameras have got scary ISO capabilities before they start pumping out what would be viewed as a grainy.
So you're talking noise would be the noise from the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing that makes a big difference I found with mine, I've got a Canon D60. Without realizing it, I was running the live view all the time.
Okay.
And that creates a lot of heat.
Yeah. Yep.
And I noticed a significant drop in the heat noise when I turned that off and left it off and only manually turned on my view of what I had just captured, for focusing purposes or to make framing, whatever. That made a really big difference. And the other thing that I remember from Andy in the original sessions, Andy did a graph, a spreadsheet of, I don't remember too many details about it, but taking 2 minutes of exposures, either all at one shot or 2 minutes worth of 5-second exposures and stacking and a few steps in between. And there was a sweet spot where somewhere around 20 to 30 seconds was where you got just as good a result from stacking 2 minutes worth of 20 seconds as just running 2 minutes worth. But the other thing is that links to my original point, which is whenever you're running a camera, for an extended period of time, that sensor is warming up and more. Right. Of course, if you take a 2 minute exposure, even with the live view screen on, you're taking a 2-minute exposure, warming up that the sensor, and if the view screen is off, you get an interval of 10-15 seconds between shots for that sensor to cool down when the live view is off.
Okay.
So all that being said, I found that 800 to 1600 for a 12-year-old Canon is a good number.
Okay.
I've been researching because I want to get a new camera, and I'm looking at these new back illuminated CMOS
Yeah.
sensors. And Herman's right; they're scary quiet.
Scary expensive too.
Yeah, that's for sure. And they're only available right now. I think the only one that I've been able to find available today is Sony full frame, and that's $5,000.
Oh,
That's a lot.
I
Might as well
live
buy
in
it.
the Canon, I live in the Canon refurbished
Yeah,
store.
that's what I do too.
Yeah, there's no refurbished on these back illuminated guys because Canon's not come out with anything other than promises for the fall quarter.
Yeah.
So where do you go to refurbish? What company?
I think the site I go to is mbd.com. They have a ton of, that's where I got my used
Okay.
DSLR from.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I saw that one. Okay.
And they had a
Really?
good selection.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah.
I'm trying to find, I don't know if I'll run across it, but there was an article somewhere about like what Bob Butwell had mentioned, about the 2-minute versus, 20-second stack for 2 minutes. But there was an article that was, recent that talked about many, many short exposures stacked. So that's something else to research for the for the
And
combination.
you get the same level of detail, like going for M31. Because I think I end up at like an ISO 400 or 800. And I think I'm probably at a 45-second or 1-minute exposure and stacking a bunch of those.
Yeah. That's probably fine. It's just the ISO really, ISO is kind of, I can't find the right words for it. Let me think about it before I say it. On going back a little bit to the noise thing, here's if you could let me share for a second there.
Okay,
Mark.
go ahead.
Share that. So here's the idea of, the noise goes down by the square root. So you see how noisy, the one image is, and then, when you get to 100, it's so much more clean.
Right.
And I'm not a big, and maybe the technology is changing enough to make what I'm about to say irrelevant, but I don't think the ISO matters all that much. I think it's
Okay.
Because it's just an artificial boost. It's not like you're saturated, you're gathering more light. So what, that's why I kind of stuck, there's one more chart here. So whatever generates the least amount of noise for your camera, and gives you the best dynamic range. So here's the Canon 6D, and this is kind of what they're saying, somewhere between 1600 and 3200.
Okay.
the best, but it depends on each, each camera is different, but
And with each telescope too. I've tried it on numerous telescopes and your results change.
yeah, well,
Going
yeah,
from-
that could be the, the focal ratio,
Right.
brighter or darker, but yeah. Anyway,
So what about sky conditions?
yeah. Yeah, what I've done more recently is I've backed down the exposure length to deal with that. So the only reason I kind of with the so I'm shooting monochrome most of the time. So with luminance, it's ideal for me to shoot no longer than 30 seconds to not, start swamping, the sky glow on it. When I use a light pollution filter on the color camera, I usually I can take to like 3 minutes. Anything beyond that, I got to start wrestling with the signal versus the light pollution. So the
Right.
signal and the noise just is higher when I go longer. So I don't know.
Yeah, I've gone up to like 6-minute exposures with and I've got an old Canon T1i. So it's a very old camera,
Yeah.
but it works great. I mean, I bought it secondhand, had it modified.
Oh, it's okay, it's modified, yeah.
Yeah, I had it HA modified. I didn't just have the filter pulled out. I had to put something else in it. Of course, that was a good winter project when it was too cold to do anything. To send it out, they have it done.
And then there was spring when there was no sky whatsoever.
Right, exactly. Kind of like what we're in now.
Still on it.
So I'll have to try that. Go with a bunch of more shorter exposures at a higher ISO and see what I could pull out. I just never seem to get the same detail out of it.
I just put in a link in the chat. So it has a lot of values for the different Canon cameras. So John, you could probably find what they would say the ideal ISO is for your T1i.
Oh, thanks. I've got it here.
Yeah,
So I have a question about the DSLR and the subject matter that you're shooting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're doing a galaxy versus a nebula versus an open cluster versus a globular cluster through a telescope, and I mean, would you use the same ISO settings for each one of those? Would you vary the exposure time for each one of those? Like, especially like if you grab a planetary nebula, which is kind of like very small with a lot of black around it, versus a galaxy maybe that has more signal against it.
Yeah. Or even in star clusters and globular clusters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great question. Yeah, I know for when I do open clusters and globulars, I back it way down. You don't need to go above a minute, because all you're going to start to do is saturate the stars. And, if that's your objective, you don't want your stars oversaturated. So,
Yeah, because what I would want from that would be like an open cluster of stars to capture the color versus go deep, lower magnitude, dimmer magnitude.
Yeah,
because that's what I would be after for globular or an open cluster, is just the star colors.
Yeah. And one of the simple tricks for knowing if you're oversaturating the stars is if you're shooting in raw format, is when you pull it up and look at it, if you see any of the stars in raw, then you're oversaturating those stars. So it should really be a black photo, and then when you stretch it, then that's when the stars would come out. So
Okay.
I have been using the histogram a lot. I use a program, astrophotography tool.
Mhm.
So to set up my imaging plan and all that. And I'm big on following what the histogram is. I'm trying to keep it just below the halfway point across the histogram.
Yeah.
So that's what I keep messing with between the ISO and the exposure to try to get that sweet spot.
Yeah, I know, at least from where I am. So I'm Bortle 7 in, Batavia here.
Yeah.
I don't even get close to that. I probably am at like 7/8 on the histogram.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I just stack a lot. So like for instance, the fireworks galaxy I did, the luminance I did, was it 100? It was like, 210 60-second exposures. But after you stack them and stretch them, then the histogram moves over, and but you experiment and see what works for your camera. So that has a lot to do with it. It's not there's a hard, fast rule.
I guess that's why I keep going for some of the same targets over and over again, changing how I'm shooting it, or even which telescope.
Yeah.
Trying to get a better result, but
yeah,
sometimes that doesn't work. I've got this little ED50 from Skywatcher. It's a guide scope, but it's also, I bought a flattener for it, and it's like 230 the focal length on it. So I can get a really wide view. I didn't have much luck in a light polluted area like this. I got to try that out at Lee to see what I get.
Yeah. Well, part of your experimentation could be is going shorter exposures and doing more.
Yeah.
More of them. It's your integration time that counts. It's not so much the exposure length.
So I have a question of how the dark frames fit into the different ISO settings. If that's any issue there, or do you just routinely take dark frames X amount of times per night?
Yeah, that's a really good question, especially in the summer.
Yeah.
Well, the dark frames, I always take the same night I'm doing the other photos.
Right, but do you do it during a time period? Like, let's say you're gonna take half hour of exposure, whatever length of time you have, right?
Right.
Well, over that half hour, the camera's gonna warm up at some point, and so do you take dark frames during that time, or after that, or before that a half hour of exposure time? And
I might be doing it.
This is a DSLR question.
Yeah, I might be doing it while I'm waiting for, like, it's going to do a meridian flip or something. And I've got a time span there. I could do some darks at that time. And then I'll do it again, do some more after I'm done imaging for the night while it's still out there, after it's done all its work, because I want to capture as many lights as I can.
Sure.
And then I still do the bias. I throw that in there also, the bias, and then in the morning I do the flats. So I've been doing all that with the t-shirt, with the flats in there.
Yeah.
Right.
I do it at the end of the shots for the object. No clue whether that's the best time or not, but that's
Yeah, and again, it depends. I think it depends like how long you're going after an object, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
So Dan, I don't think you do a long span of time, right? On your
but a lot of short exposures because I don't
Right.
guide at all. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think what Mark is getting at is you probably want to get an average of everything. So you start at the beginning, you do some in the middle, and you might do some at the end.
Based on my experience and what I've just said before, my camera gets warm to the touch.
Yeah.
After an hour.
Yeah.
I've taken dark frames at the end of a session. Okay, and it was dark frame, but I based on what I experience, I would take a dark frame every 10% of the exposure time as the camera warms up.
Right.
And I haven't done this, but there's probably a good way to match the dark frames, the 10-minute dark frame to the stuff less than 10 minutes. And then
Right.
from 10 to 20, another dark frame, and match those together.
Right.
But I don't think that Deep Sky Stacker or any of the other programs care. They just create one master dark.
Right.
And
Well,
might
the
as
thing
well
is,
get
though,
one at the end of your
okay,
session.
but what you could do, you could take, let's say you're doing it 10 exposures, whatever time period, doesn't matter, but just for math, 10 exposures, dark frame, 10 exposures, dark frame, et cetera, et cetera. So each 10 exposures, you can process as a separate
Yep.
sub. And each one of those will have its own dark frame math subtracted from it, from the 10 stack.
Yeah.
So now you have 10 of those. Those 10 can be stacked together. In Photoshop, let's say, because all your darks are subtracted from each one of those 10.
Okay.
Okay. And then you can stack those together. So here's the principle that I'm basing it on. And in the SBIG camera, which is CCD, you can do a track and stack. And what that'll do, and I've used it, and it works pretty good. You could set up, okay, I want to take a picture, Andromeda Galaxy, wide field or whatever, with the telescope, but with the CCD thing, with the cool CCD, all this other stuff. And I could say, okay, every 8 frames, I want a dark frame. So it'll do the 8 frames, stack them, take the dark off, save it. Then you keep going for how long you want. Then at the end, it stacks them all together into a final stacked image with all the darks taken out as you go along. So that's what I'm getting at with this doing 10 subs, dark frame. Then you can, you record what time you took those. So when you go into Deep Sky Stacker or whatever you use, you could do those 10, stack them, next one stack them, next one stack them. And I guess I'm getting down like into the, very detailed of processing. But if you think about it, if you have a half-hour worth of images, subs,
Right.
and then you take a dark frame after a half hour, dark frame has noise in it that's going to subtract from every one of those frames in that half hour. So that first frame doesn't have as much noise as the last frame. And so what you're doing is subtracting information from each frame, and maybe some frames you're over subtracting information. I guess that's what I'm trying to get. I'm trying to get to the next step, the next level of processing and imaging.
Okay.
So here's an example. A few years ago, what I did, I had my planetary camera on my telescope, my solar telescope, and I took pictures of the sun. And what I did was I just took it, and I had 50 of these, 600 frame images. I processed each one of those. So now I had whatever number of those I had. It took a while, but it worked. Then I took those and I stacked those together. There's unbelievable difference between just one of those and those subs stacked. So maybe even sub the subs out for the DSLR. That was always my issue with the DSLR, is that heats up over that time period, right?
Right.
It's not a cool camera.
My camera.
So you don't have that control over it. And I know I guess I'm getting like really detailed here, really, I don't know, or maybe overboard, but it depends what you want out of your images.
The Canons have a setting. My Canon has a setting. I forget what they call it, but what you do when you turn it on, it's called long exposure compensation. It takes an image, say 20 or 30-second image, but as it saves the image, it takes a dark.
Yeah, yeah.
1-to-1. You take an image, it takes a dark.
Yeah.
You take an image, it takes a dark. If it's a 20-second image, it takes a 20-second dark.
Yeah.
And in the camera, as it's saving it, you're getting a 1-to-1 noise reduction.
Mhm. And the noise varies over the time, right?
That's right. So if you're running for an hour, now I've never done this because I didn't have an intervalometer. I had to stand there, and it's murder to wait 20 seconds, then it snaps, and then nothing happens for 20 seconds, and another 10 seconds goes by while it saves it. So you're taking 20-second exposure every minute as your camera is getting twice as hot. So I didn't really do that, but now that I've got a really nice intervalometer, I might do that. I mean, that's like the ultimate noise reduction technique for darks. And you don't have to put any darks in when you go into Deep Sky Stacker. You might have that on your T1.
Hey,
No,
Bob,
I don't know.
Bob,
Yes, sir.
you said that's a Canon 60D? That's what you use?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the same camera I have.
Yeah, go way off in the menus.
I think it's
I don't
dark frame
know.
subtraction. I think it is.
Yeah, I don't think they call it dark frames.
It's not really
It's
recommended
called-
for,
It's called long exposure noise correction.
Yeah.
But it's in the I don't know. Have fun.
To do in the dark that way because
You
normally I
ask,
put the
you
camera-
find it. I
Well, there's, yeah.
if you get a 60D, it's in there.
Oh, I believe you. I trust you.
Now, how's it doing usually I'm putting the cap on the telescope when I'm doing the dark frames. But you're saying the camera keeps the shutter closed or something?
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, there's a couple of things for in the noise control area, and if you read either the instructions, God forbid you read the instructions, but in one of them it describes what I just said, is that it takes the picture and then it takes a dark picture and uses that to eliminate long exposure noise.
Okay.
And I'm almost certain that whatever it's called has the phrase long exposure.
yeah, and
Picture
that's correct, but, and that's usually intended for like a night shot or a photograph or a series of them, but I think
I
if you're
found that
trying
I
to-
take most of my star pictures at night.
Yeah, but the thing, I mean, this is more just a picture of something happening at night
Oh yeah.
rather
yeah.
than
Sure.
astrophotography, because when you do this, you're doubling for sure the time of your exposure,
Oh, yeah.
so it's not generally used for astrophotography.
Oh, I know. I've got it turned off for just that reason, that the difference in taking one dark every 30 shots and taking one per shot, I don't know. Maybe it's better, but I tried it a few times and boy, what a pain in the butt.
Now, does it matter at all doing a pause in between shots? Of 5 seconds, 10 seconds, let it cool down a little bit, or not really?
Ain't gonna cool that much. What I found is that if you go out when it's 20 degrees, you get less noise because the camera
Yeah.
runs cooler. That's it. And on a hot, warm, on a warm night where it's 80 degrees,
Yeah.
you can feel that camera get hot. I've considered bringing, like an ice pack or something to put on the back of the camera, because when you flip open that viewfinder, that flat panel, and you touch right there behind the sensor, you can feel the heat coming right through that little thin plastic. And I always thought, well, hell, I'll just put something back there and cool it down. The trouble is, you better put it on evenly or you'll get a cold spot in the middle of your sensor.
Right.
All right, so backyard EOS shows the sensor temperature. What's hot? What's too hot?
What? Not
120,
when it turns itself off, that's too hot.
Okay.
Well, in the old days, we used to build a box around the camera and throw dry ice in there.
Huh,
Hey,
That
guys.
was film camera.
I don't do much DSLR, but isn't it the battery that gets hot in the cameras?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's
Well,
That's-
wouldn't
that's
running
good
it off
pointed out,
a
too.
dummy battery with a 12
That's
volt
why one side of your image
cable
is
just solve
kind
that
of
problem,
reddish.
or at least help?
Walter, can you repeat that, Walter, please?
Yeah, I thought that it was the battery that provides most of the heat in the DSLR camera. So wouldn't running it off a dummy battery with a 12 volt cable help a lot with
Yeah, that's what I use.
DSLR?
Yeah.
I've heard people recommend doing that.
That's how I run mine. I mean, I use my DSLR every once in a while, and I have it on a run off a dummy battery, and I've never had problems with noise, even in the summer.
That's
Yeah.
I
I
think
use it-
that's why the one side of my images are reddish.
Mm.
The battery side.
Yeah, I use one of those dummy batteries that you're talking about, just because I didn't want my batteries to run out in the middle of an imaging session.
Right.
So I always have that plugged in, and I don't have the regular battery ever in there.
Huh.
Maybe a little experiment on a couple of dark frames with battery and one with a dummy battery, and see if there's a difference.
Yeah.
I've never felt heat from the battery, but I have definitely felt warmth from the flat panel behind the sensor. But I'm not going out to spend $1,500 on a cool camera. I can't
Would it-
justify that.
Would it help at all to have like a small 12 volt fan blowing on it? Like they use for the cooling the telescope mirrors?
Maybe the vibration from it wouldn't make it worth it.
Well, don't connect it to
80
it.
degrees outside.
No, you'd have to have it on a tripod next to it,
Yeah.
and you'd hold it up like this.
I've heard of other things that people have tried, like I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it, but like it's a little cooling pad. Let me see. It runs off a 12 volts, and it can cool whatever it touches, like 20 degrees below ambient. Is what's on the ZWO or cool camera sensors.
Yeah, the thermoelectric cooler.
Yeah, PZO electric, right?
I'm not sure, but
ISO
Yeah,
electric,
that's it.
yeah, they sell them at Amazon. They're like, I mean, one that size is probably $15-20.
And you just freeze the inside of your camera. It's not a problem.
yeah, then you have condensation. You never know. All these things add up.
No. Give it a
The
shot.
one that sounds the best to me is the a dummy battery with a wire that goes to a real battery.
Yeah.
That sound, I'm gonna look at that and see if I can get one. Because those batteries are expensive. Buy one
Yeah.
dummy battery and a nice lithium polymer hanging off of it somewhere. Why not?
Yeah, I think the battery for the Canons, they have like $20 on Amazon.
Yeah.
The dummy batteries
Yeah,
that you plug into your, I've got two of them here. I've got one, I've had them break on me before, so I'm making sure I always have a spare one. Because you know how the equipment goes. It just, middle of a session, it'll all of a sudden die on
That's Murphy telling you to go home.
you.
It's because you didn't sacrifice to the right gods.
Yeah.
With the weather we've had, none of us have been doing that.
Yeah, I've noticed that even when the sky appears clear, it's not transparent. We've got translucent skies these days.
Yeah, it's the fire smoke, I think.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, last year was terrible for that.
Yeah, this year I'm not sure it's going to be any better. I mean, those New Mexico fires, there's only a little portion of the, like, over Montana that doesn't have smoke over it right now.
I'm gonna have to drag out my smoke app and take a look and see where it is. I didn't think about that.
You got a smoke detector? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the D60 has one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sending another link so you can see the smoke stuff.
Oh, that's the one. Yeah, Fire Air Now.
It's actually improved. I mean, the western half of the country is okay. Anything else? It's not very good.
they anywhere near to bringing them under control?
What was that?
Are they anywhere near bringing them under control?
You can actually, what's kind of nice about this map, you can actually click on the little fire symbols and they tell you what percentage is contained for each wildfire. So let's see if I can find the one. It was like 200 and some thousand acres for just the one fire, and it was like 30% contained.
Yeah, that's New Mexico.
Yeah.
I think I'm losing one of my remote observatories out there.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's just skies are bad.
Oh, okay.
So on my Pentax camera, here's the outboard battery pack thing, then you hook
Yeah,
this up
right.
to the battery. This is what Walter was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I got to get one of those.
I don't know how hot this gets, but it's not the battery pack. So, and then you hook it up to a nice big battery and you don't worry about running out. Like you said, John, whoops, I need to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I guess for the ISO 2, what I want to do with the DSLR, first of all, is to take the wide field Milky Way stuff. So, what I would end up doing is taking some test shots for the area that I'm at and then go from there. And then that varies night to night, right? And elevation and sky conditions, and just kind of like a bracketing exercise before I start.
And the other thing too is, maybe folks know this, but the darker the sky, the longer you have to shoot too. Which seems counterintuitive, but that's the way it goes. I wish
The longer you have to, or the longer you can shoot?
No, the longer you should shoot it. So if you're in around us, and you go to Lee, you probably want to add 33% or, of exposure time to your individual subs.
Yeah, Lee's what, a 4?
Say that again, Herman?
Yes.
Lee's a 4, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because we're a 5 out here where I live, so.
And what's the reason for that?
I knew you were gonna ask.
Yeah.
Well, I ran some tests, just addressing that a couple of years ago. I took my camera out to see I started out by trying to find out what color was the light around me. So I took the lens off, pointed it up at the sky, and left it open to find out how long it would take to go to 100% with no image, just looking up at the stars. And, and I've still got that somewhere in my file somewhere. And I've made some nice charts and stuff. And then I did the same thing out at Lee. And obviously, it takes a long, long time before you get to 100% fog on the sensor. But that's where that's one of the ways that techniques they use to determine the Bortle number. Remember, I started out looking for color because I was going to try to compensate for sky color when I was post-processing. But I found out that the most important thing to find out is once you go to 100%, you forget about noise and anything. You've lost your signal. If you've exposed long enough that the light pollution fogs your image, you fogged all of your data. So there is got to be a sweet spot where you find out how long does it take to go up to 100% on a star, like Andy pointed out earlier. And that's the longest exposure you should go, no matter where you are. Even if you're in totally dark areas, if you're looking for stars, once the star hits 100%, it just gets bigger on the sensor. It doesn't get any brighter. And like he says, once you see a star on the FITS or the raw image, once you see a star, you've maxed out that pixel. So the point is, and I have one, there's the longer is not the better. You need to find, if you really care about tuning to that extent, and you want to be a purist about it, you're going to have to run some tests with your equipment. But remember, when you run tests, you're really just testing your camera and sky conditions. And everything that you learn there is applicable to your other telescope. Remember, somebody earlier said, is it an F4 telescope or an F8 telescope or an F10 telescope? Right. Because that's science. ISO in the triangle shapes the time at the other point of the triangle and shapes the amount of light at the third point of the triangle. More light, cut down on the other two.
Okay.
More time, cut down on the light. Or, you're fixed with light, so only thing you're playing with is ISO and f-stop.
Is anyone using a DSLR for solar photography?
A lot of people are.
Yeah.
There's nothing magic about that.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, all you really need is the camera adapter for prime focus, as long as you have a filter, because I'm pretty sure that's what Mark Christensen was taking when we were doing the sunspots.
Was he? Okay. Because I was planning on hooking that up to my C8. I got a focal reducer I'm going to put in line. But doing some solar, and I've got one of those Thousand Oaks filters that goes on the front of the telescope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put a glass filter in front of my telephoto lens when I was that 600 millimeter lens, and I was doing the sunspots, and
okay,
same thing,
Or you can hold up your iPhone. That's what I do.
You realize it's a sensor that even DSLR or a ZWO, there's nothing between your telescope and your sensor.
The biggest thing is to get a focus.
That's it.
Right.
Right.
Okay, let's go on to matching telescopes with cameras.
Yeah, we put my cat to sleep, so we're good. Curled up on the desk.
So I guess, we could talk about planetary, lunar versus deep sky, right? Because that would be the two biggest categories of the different cameras and the different telescopes you might use, with wide field versus fixed focus versus whatever. So Walter, what do you use for a planetary imaging?
I mainly only use my hockey puck ZWO color camera. I think the model is 290 MC, and I used that last summer, fall for imaging Jupiter and Saturn. I picked that one just due to the pixel size and the frame rate. I wanted something that had a pixel size that went well with my F ratio and high frame rate at a low cost, and that one fit the bill. I think that model has been no, you know what, it was the previous one. I thought it had been discontinued, but it was it still is pretty affordable. I think I got it for about $199. So
Okay.
it did
Yeah.
the trick. I like the way the pictures came out.
Okay. Dan, what camera do you use for the planetary?
I use the ZWO. Yeah.
The 120.
Yeah, no, I think it's 224 MC.
Okay.
That's it. And it does really good for planets. And the frame rate's not super high, but it does a nice job.
So these are like this type of camera, right? This is the Celestron, but it's the planetary camera taking lots of frames at one time. So how about the matching up the telescope? Do you usually use a longer focal length, a shorter focal length, a bigger mirror, smaller mirror, Newtonian versus refractor versus Schmidt-Cassegrain?
Well, I guess for me, when I last year would have been the first time I actually started doing planetary seriously, and just reading the general consensus was that you wanted to get a camera that match your focal ratio, so you wouldn't be undersampled or oversampled, and like a general rule of thumb that imagers in cloudy nights or the other forums go by is that you want what was it? You want your focal ratio to be 3 to 5 times your pixel size. So, for example, if your focal ratio is f15, your pixel size should be around 3 microns. So, in my case, I was using the SCT, which has a native focal ratio of f10. I was using that with my 2 times Barlow, so that gave it a focal ratio of f20, and that 290 MC wasn't the lower limit of that ratio, but it kind of fit adequately. So that's what considerations I had when I picked the camera to match it to the telescope. And I attach it to the telescope with a nose piece, like you said, at prime focus. It's got a really tiny sensor, and the 290 MC is very similar to the 224 that Dan has. I think the main difference between them two is the frame rate, like he said. But it's got a tiny sensor. I think it's like 5 millimeters, and
Yeah, it's a small sensor.
yeah, it's a small sensor, and it's
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a while to find the object that you're trying to image.
Yep, that's true.
So when you use a Barlow versus no Barlow, and with these small chips, because I run into trouble too, where you can never get it sharp enough because the chips, the size of the pixels in the chip are too small and they get overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I had the same problem too. With the Barlow, it was slightly oversampled. Without it, it was way undersampled. And I didn't have, and still don't have a 1.5x Barlow, so that would have made it like a perfect match. But the best of the two options, either under or over, I chose to be slightly oversampled.
Mm-hmm.
And the images do look a little fuzzy, or not fuzzy, but a little bit washed out. Because the pixels are on the camera, I think they're 2.7 microns. So they're really tiny.
I think Greg Cisco has come up with a pretty good method with the software for processing to overcome some of those things too. And I know what I ended up doing on my C11, I put in the f6.5 field reducer and then put the Barlow on. And that's how I came up with a really good, like you say, Walter, like that sweet spot for the magnification. Because if I left it at f10 and tried with the Barlow, then it was overwhelming the pixels oversampling, like you said.
You're going through a lot of lenses with that though, man.
Yeah.
Just see, they have a point where that's the problem.
Yep.
So you're bringing yours up to like f12.6 or something then, right?
Right.
Your C11,
Right.
if you're using the focal reducer and then the Barlow.
Right.
So that gets you, I guess, in the right, like Walter was talking about, the right, that sweet spot between 3 and 5.
Yeah. Because like with Mars F10, it was even at opposition this last couple of years, it was kind of small on the thing. So I had to try to do something. And then, one of the problems is around here too, how many nights in a row do you have to experiment with this stuff, right? So
Yeah.
you're trying to grasp at something. Now, as far as like a deep space thing, again, it's what objects you're after and what field of view you have. And so, for example, like I'll have my 6-inch Ritchie Crichton, which is an f9, but I have an f6, whatever it is, focal reducer, and that actually works out really good for the field of view for that. And then I think the other thing is how good your guiding is for the field of view that you're going to end up with, right? Because if you're taking a deep sky object at f10 versus f6, your guiding has to be, X amount better.
Yeah.
Right.
Plus at f10 versus f6, your exposures have to be longer, or you need more exposures. So that's the combination for those two things too. One of the things I did when I bought the SBIG camera way back when, I think it was like 2007 now, I did a whole research thing on pixel size and chip size and stuff at the time. and what your sky gives you versus all this. So like they had, you know, really high-end cameras available, but around here they would be of no use because they're way too sensitive. And so I ended up somewhere in the middle with the 8XE versus the 10 or the other ones that they had, which, you know, you're like drooling at, oh man, I should get that camera, you know. With our skies, it would be like, it would be useless. So I guess that's another thing for you guys to talk about is, you know, what camera for what you want to use and where you're going to use it.
Yeah, that's I found a really nice website called Astronomy Tools, and I put a link in there just for this subject we're talking about. So if you pull that open, you know, you could plug in whatever telescope you have and whatever camera, and then it shows you, you know, is my am I undersampled or oversampled, and what effect binning has on it, and seeing conditions as well. Here, if Mark, if it's all right, I'll share for a second. So, you know, I just plugged in, here's my, you know, refractor. And I like it because it has, you know, a DSLRs as well as regular, you know, CCD or CMOS cameras. And when you do it, so, you know, you guys had the 60D, right? I think you said. You know,
That's
so
what they said. That's what they said.
yeah, okay. So here's, it plugs in the pixel size because it knows it. So you don't have to go look it up. And you can see in the bar that, okay, I'm in this combination of things is pretty good for what I have. And if I say, okay, what if I did 2x2 binning? It's a kind of at the high end of things, you know. And then the other thing here, and this I wasn't aware of when I first started in this hobby, is how the seeing can affect it. And around here, I've never seen anything above, except for one night, above okay seeing. So it's either poor or okay here. So all of a sudden, well, if it's okay seeing, then we're oversampled. Unless I up the binning, and then it comes back into a good range, you know. So it's a really handy thing. So you could just plug in whatever scope, or if you know the focal length, you could just plug it in, and it gives you an idea of how suitable your scope was, or your, you know, the camera you might be looking at. Or
This
Well,
is
that's
in-
easier. That's easier than the spreadsheet I ended up doing.
sure, yeah.
I had it for all of my lenses and all my, oh man, this is so much easier.
So if so you want to go through an example so of somebody what you have, and we'll go through and plug it all in.
You can do my AT130.
So, and that is a Astrotech, right?
Yeah, you can search by the model to
Okay.
AT130.
AT130 EDT, right?
Yep.
And
And I got the same camera as you, the 294 mm.
no, that's not it. 294 mm, and then you know, ignore it for. I mean, this is the only camera that would ever come up with this option. That's a long story. All right, so the pixel size is 4.63 in bin 2 mode. So you can see it's yeah, that's a really tough. I don't know, Walter, if this, you know, because the CCD binning and the bin 1, bin 2 mode on this camera.
Yeah. Don't forget add the, so if you add the 0.8 reducer, it'll also change the suitability because it's going to change the focal length.
Sure, that's great. Now I forgot about that field, right? So here's the 0.8 reducer, and it's right on the edge.
Right on the borderline. Now, yeah, let's, and like you said, so many things affect it, if you change the scene also,
Yeah.
it could make it go from one extreme to the other one.
So
And if I was to take
seeing
this
is
telescope to like
perfect.
Yellowstone and it was excellent seeing, it would just be way over sampled too.
Yeah, so I think this is a fantastic tool, to check where you're at, and if you have binning options, what would the binning affect it?
So then the other variable that you would have to do intuitively, let's say, is what your sky conditions are that night. Okay, it says okay seeing, but there's grades of that too. So it's
Yeah.
okay seeing, but it's hazy. It's okay seeing, but it's crystal clear, so
Yeah, well,
that,
I'm not sure
that all goes in, but that all goes into like the ISO and the exposure time and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I don't think that
what
would
will
affect your
what will your sky give you that night?
Yeah, I don't think that would affect your sampling so much, or just the quality of your photo. At least, as I understand it anyway. So, I guess if we lived somewhere in the high altitudes and we had good seeing, Walter would maybe on the,
Yeah, it would be in the
sample
other
then.
extreme, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it's a really nice tool, and I selected one of my cameras by using this tool, because I was really undersampled with the camera I had, and I sold it and got another camera, and that matches up. I did that with my William Optics, so 61. Yeah, Zenithstar 61. And 183. Why does it do that? Well, 3 MC. We never have good seeing. I'm going to go to poor. I don't have a reducer, none. So when the seeing is, poor, it's just on the, coming close to being oversampled. But if it's very, very poor, then I might have trouble. But okay seeing is, right in the middle. So, but then again, if it's, poor seeing, I'm like, okay, I can compensate for that, by playing with those options, or if it's very poor. So anyway. I find at least here you get, at least as I track it, it's majority of the time it's poor seeing, according to Clear Sky Clock anyway.
Yeah, well, if it's real poor seeing, no business being out there trying to do planetary photography anyway.
Yeah, well, and planetary for sure. Yeah, that really affects it. And the other thing you could do, I think Mark alluded to this earlier, is whether it doesn't matter what software you use, whether it's Deep Sky Stacker or something else, you can add drizzle into the equation, and so that would jump it up from here, and a 2x drizzle would bring it up to well, I guess you would maybe that would be the equivalent. So you can do it by software as well, is the point, with that drizzle option. Now, I don't think I've ever, oh yeah, I did try it once. Then the drizzling option, of course, makes the files 4 times as big. So that's something to consider when you're doing that.
Small price to pay though, because the drizzle or the dithering helps with the oversampling, but also helps with noise reduction.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I've noticed, a world of difference. The dithering, for me at least, has been equivalent to like taking twice as many frames.
Yeah. And here's the good news for, and if you guys haven't said it, well, I don't even know what dithering is, or I haven't used it. If your mount isn't all that great, you get dithering for free.
That's true.
It's when you're guiding well and the image isn't moving much, is that's when you're telling it, I need you to push, push the focal point somewhere else. So anyway, that's kind of fun. But you do need drizzle does require dithering, whether it's the artificial pad mount or doing it via guiding.
Yeah, that's what the old Meade DSI Pro used. You picked out a couple stars and you weren't guiding, and it would just kind of like, you set up some calibration frames on that, and then it would do the dark frame thing. And yeah, so that was interesting to watch that happen live as it was accumulating the image.
Yeah, by the way, the astronomy tools has a lot of nice calculators. You can do a field of view calculation. What else does it do? CCD calculators, even binocular and stuff like that too.
Boy, this is a nice toy to play with. I
Yeah.
just ran down a rabbit hole over here. Well,
Does it have a category for chucklehead? Like calculating if you're a certain level of chucklehead when you're doing stuff, what your probability of success is going to be.
So I think I found the Sky and Telescope article that talked about more shorter exposures for DSLR.
Yeah.
It was December 2019. So if you look that up, and then there was another one, Galactic Hunter short versus long exposures for astrophotography, January 2021. So there's all kinds of things out there talking about that.
Okay.
And one of the phrases was used, yeah, you're going to turn it into a planetary camera.
Well, Dan's having success doing that.
Yeah. So I found, well, I didn't find, I was given a gift card to a place called MPix. And so I sent away for a print on a metal plate.
Wow.
Oh, that's nice.
And then I have one. I picked like, the black and white hydrogen alpha stuff that I had done. Trying to get it.
I saw those on the table there at the meeting. Those were yours, huh?
Yeah.
Very
But really, it's really high quality, and it's I just have it on my desk here and
There you
something
go.
to look at.
Nice horse head, Andy.
But that's the only
Yeah.
reason I'm showing it to you is I did that on Amazon for like $20.
Yeah,
Metal print.
and I did another one at Costco. I did the Veil Nebula. I got it up on the
Great.
wall. Yeah. So again, if you get something really nice, these metal prints are they'll last forever.
Yeah, I'm working on doing it above my closet there, putting metal prints up top there.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And like this, I got another one in another room, but it has like the easel type thing in the back, so you can put it on the table.
Mhm.
Okay. What should we talk about next time?
lost John.
How about, most of you folks are ASI Air Pro users, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Why don't we talk about that as a tool? And
I'd like to hear about that.
Okay.
I
ASI Air Pro tool?
Yeah, well, as a tool,
Okay.
you know, how you use it, you know, and
Yeah.
effectiveness and things like that.
Okay,
Because I have to stay awake right now and do things.
Well, you know,
Unless I'm online, then I don't even have to be anywhere.
Yeah, right,
But,
right.
the intriguing thing about that is these things do weight solving. They do exposures. They do finding stuff. I don't know what, you know, they do a lot of things.
Yeah.
They,
You know, I could,
they do live stacking too, don't they?
oh yeah, you can do, Walter has done a lot of that.
How do they
Kind
get
of
that
stuff.
much stuff inside that little teeny box?
That little box can run a actual, you know, operating system, so it's pretty powerful.
And,
Raspberry
the
Pi,
operating
right?
system is Windows, isn't it?
Except for Windows, I think it can mostly run Linux and
Yeah, this one's Raspberry Pi based.
yeah,
That's Raspberry Pi.
Ah,
Python.
oh yeah, I've heard that term now.
Yeah, if you want to just scout things out, there's a YouTuber called Windy City Astro.
Mhm.
He's actually part of the Adler Planetarium team, but he's got some really, really excellent videos on the ASI Air. His name is Nick. I've had some communication with him. He's actually, Mark, I keep forgetting to bring it up, but he's encouraged, he said, oh, you ought to bring your club out some night to Adler, and, you know, we'll set something up. And so.
Okay, so between him and Michelle, we ought to be able to get that done because she's
Yeah, I would
said the same thing.
Yeah, right.
Get your club out here.
Yeah.
Well, when Lori Lightfoot guarantees our safety, I'll be going.
Well, good luck with that.
You wimp, I grew up on the south side, for God's sake. You just get on the L and take your chances. That's called life.
I used to take the red line.
Hey, I lived in Chicago my whole life till 1984, so I know all about it.
No, you
Taking
don't.
the
No,
subway.
you don't. I took the red line starting in 2009.
Yeah, you know it better.
Let me tell you, it's not the red line, you know.
No. Well, mine was called Howard Englewood, not the red line.
So what was it called?
The Howard Englewood
Oh yeah, okay.
or the Howard, what was the other one? I forgot. It was because it split down south somewhere. Howard Jackson and Howard Englewood. Yeah. Very safe. I fell asleep on there many times.
I was serious. I'd like to hear the pros and cons. I'm sort of trying to rebuild my little CEM 25 mount. You know, and I'm thinking if I should be throwing one of those on there and the other
Yeah.
gizmos that go with it, the focuser and the, not
So,
as if it stands
yeah,
alone.
you can pencil me in for next month. Oh no, I should be okay. There's possibility I'm gonna have to go on strike duty to backfill union, and when that happens, that'll be 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. So, but that's not until the end of June. So.
Well, probably our
Retired,
next meeting could be in July if you want.
Yeah, and I could, that's when I could be in doing it. So
Okay.
yeah, but Walter could easily do it as well. But and both of us, I think, could give you pros and cons because we both do mini PCs and ASI Air, so
Uh-huh.
got a good combination.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be good to know.
By the way, the iTelescope thing is completely revamping their entire process, all their software and things. So it'll be a month before I could possibly, a month or longer before I could give you a decent presentation on that. Because I'm just learning it myself over the last few times. So.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in seeing that too. Yeah, too many cloudy nights around here.
Yeah. Like I said, it proved one thing to me: the entire world can be cloudy except for Chile. I've gone from observatory to observatory, everyone clouded out except for
Yeah.
Chile.
So did Tuesday night work out for you guys?
It did.
Okay.
Okay. I'll try again for a Tuesday night. And hopefully the Tuesday night people that couldn't make it, that want a Tuesday night, I'll remind them, hey, I'm doing a Tuesday night. Please show
Yeah, I
up.
had a-
They'll
I had
want
a
Thursday
finance-
night next, Mark.
Pardon me?
They'll want Thursday night next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I
we
had a-
had, so here's an interesting, like a parallel thing. So normally I was playing tennis Monday morning, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, and then Saturday morning, and then once in a while Thursday. So, and so, some of the guys in the groups overlap. So a bunch of guys started, let's play golf on Tuesday instead of playing tennis on Tuesday. So they wanted to change the Tuesday afternoon tennis to Wednesday afternoon. Well, then those of us that played Wednesday morning said, I'm not playing tennis twice in one day at 7:30 in the morning and then at 3 in the afternoon. Forget that. And I'll be injuring myself. So it ended up, now we're playing, the Tuesday afternoon group is playing Wednesday afternoon, and I'm not playing Wednesday morning. So it's come on, guys, make up your mind when you want to play tennis. I'll show up, you know. And so one of the guys was teasing us a little bit, two of us that don't play golf right now. And he said, when are you guys going to be playing golf? And my friend says, well, when I retire from playing tennis.
Yeah, right.
Implying that golf is a really old man's game.
Well, that's a true thing.
Yeah. Well, I gave up golf when I hurt my back, and that was it. No more golf. It wasn't worth the risk.
With my swing, I couldn't hurt my back.
Well, see, I was playing like at least 3 times a week too, and it was like,
Oh, okay.
and I was getting pretty good, and it was like, oh man, I hate to give this up, but that's it.
Well, you know, I was forced to play golf, to stop playing golf at gunpoint.
Your wife?
No, I
Oh,
was
okay.
forced to stop playing golf at gunpoint.
The other 3 people in your force
Literally.
were carrying
Yeah,
guns.
at gunpoint. I said
Was
yes.
this what red line stop was that golf course? I can think of a couple. Waveland is one, right? Jackson Park is another one. Anyway. All right. Well, if that's enough for tonight, I won't keep you guys up anymore. Thanks for
Thank you,
joining.
guys.
Thanks for all the info.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
And what I'll do is I'll just send an email out again, and you know, maybe take a look at a couple of dates and see when people want to get together again. And
Yeah,
Go
I
from
have to
there.
make sure. Yeah, I had a conflict tonight because I have a finance committee meeting with the Elgin Symphony. So that was just before this. But one of these days I'm going to get pulled off and to go there actually physically. So
okay. Well, like I said, it doesn't have to be Tuesdays. I did this as a
Yeah.
consideration, and the people I considered didn't show up. So, okay. Let's see. Where does it say stop recording?
That's a good question. It stops recording when you end the meeting.